Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. The Cat Who. Book 1, The Cat Who Could Read Backwards. Chapter 5, Part 2. An aroma of lobsters greeted Qwuilleran in the dining alcove. Plates of soup, thick and creamy, were placed on a bare table that looked hundreds of years old. Thick candles burned in iron holders. As he seated himself in a lavishly carved, high-backed chair, he heard a thud in the living room. It was followed by throaty mutterings. A floorboard creaked, and a light-colored cat with a dark face and slanted eyes walked into the dining alcove. "This is Koko," said Mount Clemens. "He was named after a 13th century artist, and he himself has the dignity and grace of Chinese art." Koko stood motionless and looked at Qwuilleran. Qwuilleran looked at Koko. He saw a long, lean, muscular cat with sleek fur and an unbearable amount of insurance and authority. Qwuilleran said, "If he's thinking what I think he's thinking, I better leave." "He's only sensing you," said Mount Clemens, "and he appears stern when he concentrates. He is sensing you and with his ears, eyes, and nose and whiskers. His findings from all 4 avenues of investigation will be relayed to a central point for evaluation and synthesis, and, depending upon the verdict, he may or may not accept you." "Thanks," said Quill. "He is somewhat of a hermit and suspicious of outsiders." The cat took his time, and when he finished looking at the visitor, calmly and without visible effort rose in a vertical flight to the top of a tall cabinet. "Whoosh!" said Quill. "Did you see that?" At the top of the cabinet, Koko arranged himself in an imperious posture and watched the scene below with intelligent interest. "A 7-foot leap is not unusual for a Siamese," Mount Clemens said. "Cats have many gifts that are denied humans, and yet we tend to rate them by human standards. To understand a cat, you must realize that he has his own gifts, his own viewpoint, and even his own morality. A cat's lack of speech does not make him a lower animal. Cats have a contempt of speech. Why should they talk when they have a contempt of speech? Why should they talk when they can communicate without words? They manage very well among themselves, and they patiently try to make their thoughts known to humans. But in order to read a cat, you must be relaxed and receptive. The critic's manner was serious and scholarly. For the most part, he went on, cats resort to pantomimes when dealing with humans. Koko uses a code which is not difficult to learn. He scratches objects to call attention. He sniffs to indicate suspicion. He rubs against ankles when he wants service. And he shows his teeth to express disapproval. He also has a catly way of thumbing his nose. That I've got to see. Very simple. When a cat, who is a picture of grace and beauty, suddenly rolls over in a hideous posture, contorts his face, and scratches his ears, he is telling you, "Sir, go to blazes." When Clemens removed the soup plates and brought the tureen of chicken in a dark, mysterious sauce, a piercing howl came from the top of the cabinet. Qwuilleran said, "You don't need an antenna to tune in that kind of message." "The lack of an antenna in a human anatomy," the critic, "impresses me to a vast oversight, a cosmic blunder. With some simple arrangement of feelings or whiskers, think what man might have achieved in communication and progenition. What we call extrasensory perception is normal extent for a cat. He knows what you are thinking and what you are going to do and where you have been. I would gladly trade one ear and one eye for a full set of cat whiskers in good working condition." Qwuilleran put down his fork and wiped his mustache carefully with his napkin. "That's very interesting," he said. He coughed once or twice, then leaned towards his host. "Do you want to know something? I have a funny feeling about my mustache. I never told this to anyone, but ever since I grew this set of lip whiskers, I had a weird idea that I'm more aware. Do you know what I mean?" Von Clemens nodded encouragingly. "It's something I wouldn't want getting around the press club," Qwuilleran said. Mount Clemens agreed. "I seem to see things more clearly," the newsman said. Mount Clemens understood. "Sometimes I seem to sense what's going to happen, and I turn up in the right place at the right time. It's uncanny. Koko does the same thing." A deep grumble came from the top of the cabinet, and the cat stood up, arched his back in a taut stretch, and yawned widely, and jumped down onto the floor with a grunt and velvety thud. "Watch this," the critic said. "In 3 or 4 minutes the doorbell will ring, and it will be the newspaper delivery. Right now the newsboy is riding his bicycle 2 blocks away, but Koko knows he's on his way here." The cat walked across the living room to the hall and waited at the top of the stairs. In a few minutes the doorbell rang. Mount Clemens said to Qwuilleran, "Would you be good enough to pick up the newspaper downstairs? He likes to read it while the news is fresh. Meanwhile, I'll toss the salad." The cat waited at the top of the stairs with a dignified display of interest while the newsman walked down to retrieve the paper and that had been tossed on the front porch. "Lay the paper on the floor," Mount Clemens instructed him, "and Koko will read the headlines." The cat followed the procedure closely. His nose twitched in anticipation. His whiskers moved up and down twice. Then he lowered his head to the streamer headline, which was printed in 2-inch type, and touched each letter with his nose, tracing the words Debian Reclam Dam. Qwuilleran says, "Does he always read backwards?" "He reads from right to left," Mount Clemens said. "By the way, I hope you like Caesar salad." The man's salad was zesty and full of crunch. Then came the bittersweet chocolate dessert with a velvet texture, and Qwuilleran felt miraculously in harmony with the world in which art critics could cook like French chefs and cats could read. Later, they had small cups of Turkish coffee in the living room, and Mount Clemens said, "How are you enjoying your new million?" "I'm meeting some interesting personalities." "The artists in the city have more personalities than talent, I regret to say. This Cal Halpoy is a hard one to figure out." "He's a charlatan," Mount Clemens said. "His paintings belong in the adventure advertisements of shampoo. His wife is decorative, if she keeps her mouth shut, but unfortunately she finds this an impossible feat. He has a houseboy or protege, or whatever the charitable term may be, who has the insolence to want to a retrospective exhibit of his life's work at the age of 21. Have you met any other representatives of the city's remarkable art life?" "Earl Lampreth, he seems to be, there is a pathetic case. No talent whatsoever, but he hopes to reach the stars on his wife's apron strings. His one and only achievement has been to marry an artist. How he managed to win such an attractive woman is beyond my imagination." "She's good-looking, all right," Qwuilleran agreed. "An excellent artist, although she needs to clean up her palette. She has done some studies of Koko, capturing all his mystery, magic, and perseverance and independence, playfulness, savagery, and loyalty in one pair of eyes. I met Miss Lampreth at the Turpin Chisel last week. There was a party. Are those aging adolescents still dressing up in fancy costumes?" "It was a Valentine's Day party. They all represented great lovers. First prize went to a woman sculptor called Bushy Bolton. You know her?" "Yes," the critic said. A good taste prevents me from making any comment whatsoever. I suppose Madame Duxbury was also there, dripping with stables and Gainsboroughs." Qwuilleran got out his pipe and took a long time lighting it. Then Koko walked into the room from the direction of the kitchen and performed his after-dinner ritual for all to admire. In studious concentration, he darted his long pink tongue over his face. Next, he licked his right paw well and used it to wash his right ear. Then he changed paws and repeated the identical process on the left. One passed over the whiskers, one passed over the cheekbone, twice over the eye, once over the brow, once over the ear, once over the back of the head. Mount Clemens said to Qwuilleran, "You may feel complimented. When a cat washes up in front of you, he is admitting you into his world. Where are you planning to live?" "I want to find a furnished apartment as soon as possible. Anything to get sprung from that plastic-coated hotel." "I have a vacancy downstairs," Mount Clemens said. "Small but adequate, and furnished rather well. It has a gas fireplace and some of my second-best impressionists. The rent would be insignificant. My chief interest is to have the place occupied." "Sounds good," Qwuilleran said from the depths of his lounge chair, with memories of Caesar salad and lobster bisque still soothing him. "I travel a great deal, viewing exhibitions and serving on art juries. And in this dubious neighborhood, it is a good idea to have signs of life in the front apartment downstairs." "I'd like to have a look at it." "Regardless of rumors that I am a monster," said Mount Clemens in his most agreeable tone, "you will not find me a bad landlord. Everyone hates a critic, you know, and I imagine the gossips have described me as a sort of civilized Isabel, with artist pretensions. I have few friends, and thankfully no relatives, with the exception of a sister in Milwaukee who refuses to disown me. I am somewhat of a recluse." Qwuilleran made an understanding gesture with his pipe. "A critic cannot afford to mix with artists," Mount Clemens went on, "and when you hold yourself aloof, you invite jealousy and hatred. All my friends are here in this room, and I care for nothing else. My only ambition is to own works of art. I am never satisfied. Let me show you my latest acquisition. Did you know that Renoir painted window shades at one time in his career? The critic leaned forward and lowered his voice. A particular elation shone in his face. I have 2 window shades painted by Renoir. A shrill howl came from Koko, who was sitting in a tall, compact posture, gazing into the fire. It was a Siamese comment that Qwuilleran could not translate. More than anything else, it sounded like a protest.